Can you hear me okay?
Aloha.
Aloha. Yate. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you. Nice to have a long weekend.
I see. Can you hear me okay?
It's a little soft, so I'm wondering if it's my settings.
I hear an echo on my end. How's it? Okay. There's a slight lag in my conversation. Yate. I'm going to introduce myself. Hello, my name is Ladon Yazi. My computer's muted.
And it should be coming through there.
Yes, I can hear now.
Okay. She can hear now, she said.
Okay.
Okay. So,
But not a second. Okay, try it now.
okay. How's the sound? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, then. So I just went ahead and introduced myself in my native language, saying that I am of the one who walks around clan born for the big water people. As an outside tribal member, I try my best to inform individuals where I come from, a little bit of the history here, and really just giving them a familiarity of where I come from. I come from a small community. I'm Diné, and there's a lot of cultural differences within each tribe. And the purpose of going through this podcast was to inform community members in the San Ildefonso Pueblo some of those differences that take place or that are shared from different cultures. As we all know that Native people have kind of lost their way or have had difficulty trying to reconnect to their cultural roots. And we are doing our best now. There are many efforts where we're trying to reconnect those dots, or we're trying to reconnect through food, and then also through physical fitness, health, wellness. We bring those aspects in and do our best to inform communities. And I recall when I went to the FANCY conference, the Food and Nutrition Conference, we had a lot of good information to share. And I was really thankful that you were able to discuss and have those conversations as we sat there learning from you. And I would like the Pueblo to hear you, and I would like them to hear your story of how you're working with food and how you're working with the community. Yeah, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for asking. Um, did you? Are we starting with a question? Did you? I'm not sure, but how did you want me to start? Is what I guess I'm asking.
Tell me about yourself.
Okay. Hold on. Let me see. Okay.
Would you like me to just talk a little bit about myself and where I'm from while you're fixing that, or? Yeah, I'm not hearing Ladon.
On the computer. Gotcha. All right. There we go. A lot of confusion. It's been a while since we got on the podcast. So yeah, an introduction, and then I do have some questions.
Okay. Well, aloha, everybody. My name is Ka'iulani Odom. I am a dietitian, but I've also been working in Indigenous health for most of my career. Um, I work at Kokua, Kalihi Valley. We're a federally qualified health center within Kalihi, which is urban. It's about a 15 to 20-minute drive outside of our main town, but it's kind of on the outskirts. We have a health center. We in the back of the valley we have 100 acres where we have uh, let's see, community gardens. We grow our foods. We grow medicines. We're doing some reforestation of our native plants. We also have an apothecary where we make our own medicines, and also we have a Lomi practitioner, our Hawaiian way of massage that works up there. But really, my work is centered around food. And so when we started, I think started in 2011, that was the beginning of our program. There were just three of us, and we had the community garden, and we were tasked with looking at how we could use food to uplift a community. Because a lot of times, as a dietitian, you often hear of what you can't eat, or don't eat this, or this is bad for you, and that mindset of looking at food and what's not good for you is not what we wanted to create. We wanted people to be really healthy and proud of the food and where they came from. And so our task was to take a look at our cultural foods and help everybody to understand that food connects us to our spirit, it connects us to our religion, it connects us to our neighbors, it connects us to the earth, it connects us to the air, it connects us to our history. And all of these connections are really important to us. They're important to our health. And so when these connections are broken, our health becomes broken. And so how could we use food to strengthen all of these connections to build a healthier community? And so we went from having a garden, starting programs. We work with 20 small organic farmers now to bring in healthy food to our community. Every week, we run 2 community gardens. We have a small cafe that's only open on Tuesday and Thursday, but the food that we make all comes from, most of it, I'd say 85% comes from our island of Oahu, which is a big island, or within the state of Hawaii, I guess I should say. We do get a few things that are from some of the other islands. We, like I said, support 20 small farmers in doing this. We make foods available, especially cultural foods. So for us, our breadfruit, our taro, sweet potato, those kind of things that our community really wants, we make sure to have those on a regular basis for them, so they have some place to come to get that. We do cultural birthing program for Native Hawaiian couples. We found that with colonization, we lost a lot of our birth practices. And in fact, it was at the point where our Hawaiian moms, and this is, of course, my grandmother, great grandmother's time, but they thought that going to the hospital like the white women did showed status. And what happened was we started to lose our cultural practices. And so we've been working for about 15 years in the community to offer classes to couples that help to empower them to have the birth, whether they give birth at home or in the hospital, wherever they choose to give birth, that they can use our medicines, that they can use our foods, that they can practice lomi. We have a practice of ho'oponopono, which we say is really to make things right before the baby comes out. And that's in the relationships, in the home you're living in, whatever it is, but to set everything right before the baby comes. We teach them about their kuleana or responsibilities. And even in this birthing class, it's not just about responsibility to the baby, but this cycle of feeding them foods that help to support our farmers that are using our land in the proper ways. And so we're creating a cycle that you may just think, oh, it's pregnant mom, what does that have to do with Aina? But it has everything, or land. It has everything to do with that, because we need to promote practices that are accountable to our land, and our land needs to be accountable to our people. And so kind of in a Western mindset, you own the land, people own the land, they can do whatever they want to it. But from an Indigenous perspective, the land is our part of us. It's our, that's why when I hear about climate change, and I think, from an Indigenous perspective, we are one with all of our elements, and so we need to take care of them. And so we don't own them. And when people think they can own these things, that here's where the problems come. But anyway, I'm going off on a different track. So we do a birthing program. I do a health program for families where we teach the kids to cook. It's one of the things that I think that has been lost as parents are working 2 jobs and getting so busy. So we do monthly cooking classes. We take them on take them to cultural place, teach them cultural practices, how to catch fish and make an imu, which is our underground oven. We bring families together on a regular basis just to teach them about eating healthy, but from a cultural lens. So we do that. We are in the midst of getting a mobile food truck so we can go out into the community, and so we can serve more of our community. We also are involved in research projects. We're part of GusNIP, and so we have a program where 130 families or 130 participants are getting fresh fruits and vegetables every single Wednesday. And we make sure, that we know is it a Samoan family? Is it a Hawaiian family? Is it a Filipino family? And we try and gear the foods so that there are cultural foods in each of the boxes that they get. And we also do a lot of community work. We do community events, things like that. So that's the program that I come from.
Wow, there's so much that you're really, bringing attention to me, to the community here. And there's so much involved as far as trying to figure out, where do we start? What can we, it seems like I heard that you are working, you've worked quite a few years sorry, I have an echo, in this area of nutrition, this area of community health. And it's really the intent, this conversation is to bring awareness, but also to provide us with ideas. A lot of things that you talk about are some of the initiatives we are taking a look at. We're really trying to start here at our Health and Human Services on the tribal reservation and bring the attention to where we all need to kind of focus. As you said, the culture or the non-native culture, they have a different approach to health. And as Indigenous Native communities, we got to find that what works for us. And it's a challenge to find out, okay, to bring it to allow ourselves to kind of think of, okay, in my culture, and I'm sure with every other traditional culture, we're taught about how to respect the earth, appreciate what the earth has brought. And a lot of that is the foods. Sometimes there's that overconsumption that we're not thinking about. Um, and a lot of it, as you mentioned, it's not ours. It's something we borrow, but we also pay homage and we give back in a way that is either is, planting a tree or providing those nutrients back to the earth. Those are some of the things that we've kind of strayed from, and that's attention that we could take into consideration and kind of, we don't have a community garden yet. It was in the works a few years ago. We're slowly bringing back some of these topics you brought up. So like a mobile food truck. Those are in the works as far as working with outside organizations and agencies. But yeah, I really like that these are ideas that we'll consider, think about. I know that you had talked in one of the conversations about how food connects us. And I really liked how you talked about how food connects us to the land, our ancestors, our culture, and our spirit, and then also connects us to our next door neighbors. So we are pretty close in proximity to other pueblos, Nambe, Tesuque, Santa Clara. We're pretty close to other neighboring pueblos. And in some aspect, I feel like we've got to come together. We could come together and kind of tackle some of these challenges, because these health conditions that we've come across, it's very difficult to understand. But instead, it's kind of taking a step back away from what we've learned, that colonization, kind of that idea that medicine's going to take care of everything. But really, it's taking a step back and looking at where we come from and what was done, what our ancestors did, or what we can do to promote our health. I really like that you had mentioned that. And you also had said that if we're not able to connect in this way, if we're not able to share, our spirits are broken. You'd mentioned that in one of your conversations, and I was just thinking, yeah. And then our communities become broken, and it's really hard to kind of to jump back out there and say, okay, this is what we want to do. I think it's going to be quite a while before we start moving in that direction of what's good and healthy for us, exploring and really asking elders, community members, what was done before? What can we do now? How can we move forward in a healthy manner? I'm curious to know, do you still feel this way about food and the connection? And could you explain a little bit about your take on how food connects us to all of these elements?
Well, I think that one of the strengths of our program is that being able to bring in the cultural aspects. It's what makes it different from any, just program that they could get outside in any other medical facility or health facility. And when we first came into KKV, we understood that, this was, we have almost 150, 200 workers. They're very passionate about our community, but food wasn't at the forefront of what people were thinking. And so there were, like I said, there were just three of us. And we would do things like on a Friday afternoon, we would give an employee $50 to make a little taste testing some type of food from their culture, and we would meet in the lunchrooms on Fridays, and people would bring in things from their culture. They would do slideshows, they would tell stories, they would sing songs, they would dress in traditional dress. And we're a very multicultural place where I work, and so we had someone from Greece, we had someone from Panama, we had someone from people from the Philippines, from Samoa, from Hawaii, and they would come in, and it was so much fun for the staff. And what they were doing was they were sharing about their culture. They were being proud of who they were and where they came from, and they were being proud of the food. And that was a simple way that we started within our own clinic, was to make sure that we all knew that the foods, our indigenous foods and where we come from, is something that we need to share, and that we can gain knowledge from our kupuna. So no matter what ethnicity you were, if you went back several generations and you looked at when I say kupuna, I'm talking about your grandparents, your ancestors, what did they eat? And so that started us on our journey. And then we started to do things within the community that would bring light to food. So we would have little events on Friday afternoons once a month, and we would feature a cultural food from one of our communities. And so for the Micronesian community, they take breadfruit and they pound it into something called corn. So we would have we would just highlight the food, and we would make all kind of appetizers around that food. And then we'd have like a pounding demonstration or a weaving demonstration if we were doing coconut, or how to make milk. But we would invite outside agencies that worked within our community to these events. And they were short, 4 to 6 o'clock p.m., just so people could come, they could taste foods, they could learn a little bit more about traditional foods. And all we wanted to do was to raise awareness, and again, give our community the chance to shine and show their foods. We would have these dinners, and this was before COVID, we stopped at COVID, but called Decolonizing Diets. And we would pick a subject. It could be GMOs, it could be which are a worry over here. It could be about kalo, our traditional food that we consider our older brother. It could be any of these topics that were a little bit, fishing rights. And then we would have a dinner. Again, we prepare the food according to the topic, all kind of foods around that topic. We invited just really good conversation over dinner and fun, and we'd have questions people could talk about, and we'd have a couple of speakers that would talk from a cultural lens about these topics to educate, and then we would invite questions. And so we would take these controversial topics within our food system, but we would create a space that was safe and nurturing to discuss it, and we would invite more than our community to be in on these topics. So part of it, our early work was really raising awareness, infusing culture into everything that we did for our birthing class. We tell the parents that they carry, they give birth to their children, who give birth to their grandchildren, who give birth to their great great grandchildren, and so on. And so they have within them all of their future generations. And so the women carry the eggs, the men carry the sperm. And so what they're doing every time they eat something is they're nourishing not just their body and not just the child that they are giving birth to, but they are now nourishing all of their future generations, because that child they carry will carry on. And even if you're not pregnant yet, and you're still feeding all of the reproductive cells in your body. But we also tell them too that everything that they say, all of their future generations can hear them, because there's still cells in their body and they're affecting them. And all of the actions that they do every day are felt by their future generation. And so if we start to look at health and how we're passing down healthy aspects of our lives, it really begins within each one of us. And we have the capability, we have the strength to affect all of our future generations by what we eat, what we say, and what we do on a daily basis. And if we kind of look at it that way, instead of, I always say that you can grow up and hear your parent, your mom saying, "Oh, I have to lose 20 pounds for my class reunion," or, I'm going, and these unrealistic expectations of what we need health or why we need to lose weight. And that we have to think about generationally, what are we doing to pass on to all of our great, great, great grandchildren? What can we do in today's time? And so that's taking care of ourselves, that's taking care of our land, making sure that our land is healthy. We have made a choice to support organic, because we're an island. We only have so much land, and we need to make sure that this land stays healthy for many, many, many generations to come. And so we support the farmers that are putting good intent and good things into our soil. But the other thing, like I alluded to before, is really our relationship with all of our plants, all of our food. For us as Native Hawaiians, all of our plants, and we were a religion that recognized, many different gods, and big gods, small gods. We had, gods. And our gods were representative of our nature. And so, in respecting our gods, we respected nature. And sometimes I'll give talks and talk about how each one of our foods represented one of these gods, and so that when we ate the foods, we got in all of the qualities we admired. When we planted the foods, we were respectful because we knew that we were planting, something that connected us to our spirituality. When we made the foods, when we ate the foods, it all connected us to our spirituality. And someone will say, well, that's kind of a pagan thought. And I say, well, no, if you think about it, for the religions that came in with colonization and Christianized, or whatever, what happens when they eat that piece of bread? Well, they're eating the body of Christ. And what happens when they drink the wine or the water? They are drinking the blood of Christ. And it becomes that eating of that food becomes a very spiritual act. But it happens once a week in a man-made house. And for indigenous people that understood that our foods were connected to our spirituality 24/7, every single day of the week, in everything that they did, we treated our foods differently. We treated the earth differently. We respect it and we take care of it all of the time. That act of eating and caring is spiritual to us. It's innate to our culture. And so those are some of the things that we're trying to also bring back. For one of my kids' programs, a mom was telling us that her daughter had a potluck to go to, and the daughter was in our program, and we were teaching them about we call it mana, but in other words, chi or essence or whatever, but the mana of foods, the power that foods, the spirituality that foods have in them. And so anyway, the daughter came home and she was like, Mom, I have a potluck tomorrow, so can we make something? And the mom was tired and she's like, oh no, can we just go buy it? And the daughter was insistent. She's like, no, we have to make it. And they went back and forth, and the mom's like, I just worked all day. Can we buy it? We'll go to Whole Foods. That's healthy. We can buy something healthy. And the daughter finally just said, but Mom, if we don't make it, we don't put our mana inside of it. And the mom just had to stop and say, you're right. Let's make something. And so by working with the kids and to start instilling things in this at a very young age, then we get to, they get to help us to influence maybe parents that have become set in their ways, or don't think about this all the time. But for our family programs, we work with the kids, but we bring everybody together, and we do a lot of our culture. We use our cultural foods. We use, we can make other foods too, but we teach the kids all of these aspects about food. It's not just about the food themselves. And as a dietitian, of course, I'm trained in carbohydrates and proteins and fats and minerals, but what I understand as an indigenous nutritionist is my connection to the food goes way beyond just what it contains from a nutrition value. And those are the things that are important for us to teach on a daily basis. And so, we started small. We listened to our community. We infuse culture in everything we do. And sometimes, for most part, you can work within most medical facilities or guidelines or whatever, and still impart all of your cultural stuff. And sometimes you just have to say, that's not what we believe, and this is what we believe. And luckily, I work at a place that really values our culture. And so while I'm Hawaiian, like I said, we have many cultures there. We have, Micronesian, Filipino, all of these things. And we take it also into historical account. And so for our Micronesian community, many people don't understand that the United States used their waters and bombed their waters and tested, and so they destroyed the food system over there. Their fish and the sea life became poisonous. And so not just poisonous, but caused cancer and other things. And so the United States has a fiduciary responsibility to them. They bring them over because for medical treatment and things like that. But and then they didn't want to drink their water. They didn't want to eat from the ocean. They, wanted the canned foods, all of that kind of stuff. And so sometimes when you see them eating that now, you think, oh, they just don't want to be healthy. But we have to take many steps back and to look and say, well, what is the cause of this? Well, we bombed the heck out of their waters, and this is what they had to eat for a long time, and this was safe for them. And now we have to, work at bringing back in the cultural foods, in the other foods. The same with Native Hawaiians. We've lost a lot of our fishing rights, our gathering rights, our land. So many of our people are moving out of Hawaii because it's become so expensive to live over here, and you can't just go and hunt or fish, or you don't have land to grow like you can before. And these are much bigger problems than just eating healthy. And so how do we address all of these as a people? That's a huge question for all Indigenous people, wherever you are. How do we address these things that happened to us in the past that are some of the causes for us not eating healthy? It's not just about teaching people, someone that kale is healthy, but we really have to talk about and address all of these issues.
It is so much that brings attention to the Native culture, the Indigenous people, of how colonization has really impacted our past and has changed the future of a lot of things: our health, our wellness, our spirituality, our culture, how we do things today. And that's really understandable in a sense that different tribes coming in from different areas, or kind of talking with a lot of different Native people, there's been challenges and difficulties because of maybe the land that has been taken from the communities, the hunting lands, the fishing lands. Those have changed the diets of the individuals. And so it's trying to thinking of different ways for us here in the Southwest. It's trying to work in really cleaning up. There's that aspect of either, I don't want to say starting over, but it's more finding what's going to work in the community. Hunting areas, for example, that can be a challenge. Maybe it's going to be there's either on the Navajo reservation, it's going to be the uranium mines. There's a challenge. There's uranium still left in the area from World War II, and the livestock are eating the plants that have grown from the uranium, and it's causing cancer in the Native people, the Native community. It's causing miscarriages. It's causing just detrimental health issues for those Native people. And it's a conversation that starts within the communities. I would say awareness. And from my understanding, in the Pueblo here, there's also the laboratories, the Los Alamos National Laboratories, and they have areas where they have radon, I believe it was, that could carry over into the water, into the soil. And that becomes a big health concern for the community here. And so bringing that to the attention of the people, bringing that to the attention of policymakers, it's something that I feel like it's a long way to figure out what's going on. How can we help or mediate or change that direction of where we're going? Did we fix that? Do you still hear an echo?
Okay.
Here we go. So can you still hear me? Can you hear me
Yes.
okay?
Okay.
Okay. Well, on that slight tangent, um, well, um, I had another question, and hopefully, well, kind of in similarity to what we're all talking about, how we talk about sharing of knowledge and sharing of stories. One of the conversation I'd overheard you talking about was how we can share similar recipes, how we can share, or how we do share similar recipes that we're not aware of, that we don't know of. Here in the Southwest, we have a recipe that we call tuoshchin on the Navajo Reservation. In the community of the Pueblo, it is atole, or blue corn meal, or blue corn mush. However, how everyone has this dish is different, but it's very similar. It has good nutritional qualities, and I was happy to learn that you had gone through, I believe, talking about a kalo plant in one of your conversations, and how this plant was passed down and it shared through the different communities in your, I may be saying it wrong, shared in the different communities, but everyone partakes in it. And I like that like knowing that we share different commonalities within our food systems. And you talked about how these foods can build a bridge, or you talked about how these foods can connect us. And I like the fact that I'm able to share stories with the community in the Pueblo that our tuoshchin, our blue corn meal, is similar to the otole. And we also share recipes of how we can prepare it differently, or how we can add to it to increase that nutritional value. So, for example, we add juniper ash, to our blue corn mush, and so that increases the calcium content. And that's something down the road I would like to share, is some of the foods we do have really good qualities. Our traditional cultural foods have good qualities in them, and we tend to not realize that. That's where we got a lot of our nutrients from. And to bring that out and bring that up and bring that to the attention and say, hey, this is what we're doing, this is how we're going to go about it. You're welcome to partake in it. Those are the conversations that I found interesting when you were talking about food and the initiatives you're taking, or the program is taking, where you're coming from. So,
Sorry, what was the question?
well, I really like that you talked about how you shared knowledge, and the stories that you had were pretty similar. The foods that you shared are pretty similar within the communities. And I would like to know if you have any other stories that you would like to share.
About sharing food, I mean, we do that's our nature. We do it all the time, and so we make sure that for whatever community events we do, that there's always food to share. We have recipes on our website. We are working on videos, but we also have different degrees of sharing, and so we have a small community garden right in back of our clinic. Sits um, the largest public housing entity in the whole state of Hawaii. And we have a small little 3rd acre garden on that. And we just built the structure on there. And so in our tradition, we will need to do a blessing of the structure. And so when we will invite certain guests that will come in at 9 a.m., they will be part of our oli, or prayers, and traditional cultural prayers, and then they will partake in traditional foods. and each of these foods will have a meaning to them. So the breadfruit in Hawaiian means ulu, so that means to grow. And so we will, talk about how this breadfruit, this ulu, which means to grow, will be about, growing the plants in here, growing the relationships, growing the community. So each of our cultural foods at that blessing will have a meaning to it. There's a reason why they're there. We'll talk about that as we do the blessing. And there's other components of the blessing, but that'll be the first part of it. And then in the second part of it, it'll be open to the community. And so we will have cultural foods from all the different communities. And so anything we do, we make that sure that there are cultural foods attached. So now it may not only be it may not only be taro and breadfruit and fish. There may be some other things, but we always make sure that there's some type of cultural foods to it. We also, we do different events within our clinic ourselves. And so sometimes some of the other programs, so for our diabetes program, we help them by providing outside space for the diabetes group to meet every month. And so whether they're down at that garden or we have the larger garden in back of the valley, the nature preserve, it seems to have made a real big difference for the diabetes group. Instead of meeting in a room with four walls, to meet outside in a garden, to do some planting, to eat healthy cultural foods, there seems to have been like just this shift in attitude and coming to the program and stuff. And so we use cultural foods to teach about how, when you eat your cultural foods, they don't raise your blood sugar as much. And so, but do we know all the recipes from all the cultures? No. So we encourage them to share recipes within each other. We also really believe that our plant medicines are helpful. So we always have, during COVID, we made sure that turmeric, or olena as we call it, was available for everybody to make teas, to, keep healthy. We have other medicinal plants on site that people can come up to. And there's someone on site that knows about the plant medicine. But we also find it really important to share the stories and share the culture that and I don't know how to say this delicately, but within the loss of indigenous religion and the belief in all of the different our connections to spirit and to plants and everything, the belief that there can only be one God and that's the only one, that knocks out a lot of our stories, right? And so I've gone to places and say, well, what are your traditional stories around this? And they're like, we don't tell that anymore because it's not allowed in the church. And so that's another thing that we have to, come up against is, and, I personally believe that you could pray, to whoever you want. The spirituality is still there. And if you look at Hawaiian spirituality, we had 400,000 gods, like I said, big ones, small ones. And so when the Christians came over and they had just this one God, we weren't like, oh, he's the only one. We were like, we have 400,000. Let him join the pack. The more the merrier. We can, he's fine. He can come in with ours, and that's. But over time, they started to say that ours were not good, and this one God was the only one and true God, and that led to not being able to always truly express our stories of passing down of stuff. And so we want to make sure that our stories are, no matter who you pray to, make sure though that the stories, because a lot of our stories, they relate to our spirituality, they relate to our food, they relate to how you can take care of the land, and you kind of cut out pieces of it. I'm also a hula dancer, and a lot of the kind of the new wave Christianity, they would come in and they would dance to different songs, which we never really danced to prayers. Our prayers were one thing. And all of a sudden I had, there were people I was dancing with that said, oh, we can no longer do the ancient hula because that's pagan, but we can only do this new stuff. And I'm like, you can't even separate like where the origins were from. The origins are based in our culture and practice. And so I think that, just that the mindset that comes in with some of that has altered the way that we think about stuff. And so part of our job is also to say that we are a cultural people and we can still tell the stories and we can still dance the dances and we can still use the foods no matter who you pray to. And so that's something that, I mean, just honestly, that goes up in our community is that we have to navigate all of that as we're doing all of this. But we, like I said, if, from our pregnancy program all the way to working with our elders, sharing of foods is something that's integral to all that we do. And the other thing that I often say is that we often, you know, we're fully grant funded. All our programs run on grant. And so what happens is I see in a lot of our communities is we have these great programs, whether around language or they're around culture or they're around land, and we're doing really great work. But then we're feeding everybody hot dogs and chips or chili and, you know, Fritos, that kind of stuff. And so I need to constantly, nicely try and remind people that eating healthy was just integral to who we were. These were the foods that we had. These are part of our body. And so as we do all these great other programs within our culture, we also have to think that the foods are important. You know, they often spend a lot of money on something, but then say, oh, we don't have the money to serve healthy foods. We're just going to buy this or that. And so building into all of our programs, the ability to serve healthy cultural foods and all that we do is very important.
And I agree. I agree. We have a special diabetes coordinator who has that health initiative in mind and serving good nutritious food, good quality items, and we're putting together an event. I want to go back to how you talked about in your special diabetes program, individuals are able. I like that you took this program and you took it outside to the garden for individuals to participate in, and I feel like that is true. It is true. It is a good way of getting people involved in taking care of their food, looking at that time frame, that time-honored tradition of raising your food and then really appreciating it. It's like when we work with the kids. We work with the kids at the Learning Center. And if maybe they're served something that they didn't partake in, there's a likely chance they're not going to eat it. But when we go in there and they're making their own recipe, they have the hands-on experience of putting together what they want in their recipe. They're more likely to eat it. And so it's really that finding what works for each, really for either for each community or for each age group. And I like that you mentioned that it's really important that we're in touch with our food. You talked about having, when we were putting together events, and sometimes we kind of forget, okay, let's just, something quick and easy, but really the message that we could take is maybe we could step outside the box and try something new. And we're doing our best here to find ingredients that are outside of what everyone's used to. So for example, we have we put together a food preparation class instead of a cooking class, because we don't have the kitchen facilities here at Health and Human Services. So instead, we're able to bring the community and community members to prep their food. So look at the ingredients, look at what they're preparing. So kind of take that same step of how we worked with the kids. If they prepare it and they see what's going into their food, they're more likely to eat it. Well, I did get a lot of images and pictures from the community showing what their end result was. So they took these ingredients home and they were able to prepare them. So it was really nice to see the outcome. They followed through, and so that was kind of their homework. And so that was something I appreciate, and I would like to continue working with the community in this way. We're also working with the kids at the Learning Center, and then also at the trying to get into the schools and work with the kids and share a little bit of what we know as far as the ingredients in food. We have a state dietitian or nutritionist that comes in and talks to the kids about the different foods and the benefits of the different foods. So we're doing that. Down the road, we're going to be working with food distribution agency organization, and last week we brought in a few trucks to distribute some of the foods that are prepared that are distributed within the program. And then we're also working with the CSA, community supported agriculture, sharing food. A lot of the local farmers here in New Mexico were able to share their foods, and a lot of them were, for me, some of them were a little foreign, but did my best to kind of explore and really create a soup, create something small, and work with those ingredients. So, I don't think I have any more questions at this point.
Well, I do want to say that we try and, we have traditional ways of cooking our foods, but we also try to experiment. And so, kalo is our traditional food, but we make kalo fries, we make kalo patties, we've done breadfruit hummus. We really try and show a variety of ways. The other thing is that some of our traditional foods take a long time to cook. So for kalo, it takes at least 3 hours to cook because and even the kalo leaves, the luau leaves, because you want to cook out the oxalic crystals so that it doesn't make your mouth itchy. And so what we do is we actually cook and cube it and freeze it. And that's for the corm of the kalo, or for the leaves, we cook it and freeze it, and then we offer that to sale, and we don't add anything in. So people with EBT and SNAP, they can get their traditional foods, and if they want to add flavorings to it afterward. But this way, if someone wanted to put it into a stew, or they wanted to, like with the leaves, just mix some chicken in it and some seasoning, that makes it very easy for them to have cultural foods in a fast manner without spending 3 or 4 hours, cooking these foods. Within our cafe, we do all different kinds of recipes with our traditional foods to show people that there's a lot of ways to cook them and enjoy them. One of our other staff members, she's actually experimenting with the breadfruit, and she cooks it, she shreds it, she dries it, and she puts it into a package with other dried vegetables. And again, we don't use any seasoning, so this can again be bought by EBT SNAP members, and she just rehydrates it. And you could just boil it and rehydrate it and make a soup, or you could actually rehydrate it and make patties with it. And so we're always trying to experiment, but we also always talk to the community and ask for recipes, or we're always asking them to remember how their grandmother made something, or if they can, remember as a child, family. So we're constantly collecting stories that, as we serve the foods, we're able to share some of these ways that within our community the food was used. And so we like to experiment a lot with the foods. We like to, have tasting. Sometimes if there's an event coming up, we, make small little dishes for the staff. During COVID, we got a grant so that every Friday we could make our staff a meal so that they felt loved and appreciated and we tried to make sure that there were cultural foods within all of that. During COVID, we made food dishes for our elders, and again we made sure that there was at least one traditional food in their lunch that went out all the time, and they just really appreciated that. But it wasn't only about the food, it's the connections, like I said, that you make with the food. And so many of our elders said that just someone coming and bringing them food, or someone calling to ask how they were as they were coming to drop off the food, was so important to them. So it's never just about the food itself. It is about the stories. It's about the connection. It's about building this trust within each other, and then that helps to grow trust within the whole community, which is so important.
I agree. I agree that just each community is different, but in that sense, there is a great way to build a bridge or connect with the community through food. So I'm glad that you're, you know, there's success coming out of connecting with the community. Slowly, we're moving through that. We're doing our best to reach out and provide these messages and inform communities that everyone, Indigenous communities, are doing their best to revitalize some of the lost or even the forgotten or even, you know, some of those recipes that have gone unnoticed, bringing them back and bringing them, finding that they're healthy, they're nutritious, and there's benefits to going back to what we started with. Our bodies are built, and science shows that our bodies are, for example, milk. We didn't have milk years and years ago, like decades ago. And so our body has the hardest time as Native people, as Indigenous people, we have the hardest time digesting it. And then that's when we go back and we find, hey, you know, that juniper ash that goes into the blue cornmeal, that atole, if you could put it in the atole, that's going to provide you a sense of, or provide you the same derivative as calcium does. So knowing that information and learning from that and connecting with cultural foods is very important and something we could consider and start small and bring it into the community. Start with their staff, start with the Pueblo here, and then hopefully down the road we'll be able to bridge that connection with the surrounding Pueblos. So yeah, thank you. I really appreciate all the information that you've provided. We have challenges with monitoring our podcast and making sure everything's running smoothly. Thank you for giving us feedback as we're going along. It's very helpful. But yeah, I hope we can connect down the road and kind of communicate and figure out, hey, some of these, see what you're doing in your community, see how it's benefiting some of the challenges. We only have a little bit of time, but I'm glad that you're able to connect with us. We're here in New Mexico. We're doing what we can, and it's really nice to hear from you and see you. You had mentioned in your email that you went to Flagstaff, Arizona for a little bit.
Yeah, for Christmas we went to my kids and I went to Flagstaff.
Oh, that's so nice to hear because I'm just down the road from there. I'm originally from the reservation in a small community called Yalcon. And when I learned that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I was just down the road that same, around that same time frame. It would have been nice to connect even then. But
Yeah, hopefully we'll go again. They wanted to see snow. We don't have any snow. Well, top of Mauna Kea will have snow, but snow's not something we see. So that's what we went. But maybe next time we go, we can.
Yeah, for sure. We could
come to Hawaii. You're always welcome to come to Hawaii and visit us.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes. So you were closest to one of our sacred mountains. We call it Kokua Sleep, and that's one of the surrounding. We have 4 of them, and I live closest to that one. So we pray, like you talk about culture and the gods and all those deities. We pray to one of our deities is there. One more story. Kind of story of white shell woman, and it was said that white shell women in our native culture, my native culture, was here on Earth existing. She was beautiful. She was somebody who everyone looked to, and she became a deity. And she left, toward the west, and we've never seen her again. Today, our ancestors say that she's living there in Hawaii. So that's our belief. That's a little bit of our tradition and how we communicate and how we share our stories. So, yeah, just wanted to share that little tidbit.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I think we don't have. I don't know if we have any questions. And
We do.
From
Renee has something in the chat.
Okay.
You see it?
Oh, I see. Okay. So, okay, so we have a suggestion. We had somebody, I believe at Facebook, we have an individual asking suggestions on how to teach to make desserts that are diabetic friendly. So that's something. Yeah.
You're not very clear coming through. If you could write the question in the chat box for me, that would be super helpful.
Sure. So we have a.
It's up on the screen.
What's that?
Can you see it on the screen?
Can you see it on the screen?
Oh yes, okay. It's about yeah, desserts are a hard one. You know, our community has come to like sweets, they've come to like sugar. And so we you know, we try and do things again, like if you look at the kalo, the sweet potato, those things, they're actually their glycemic index is very low. And so if we can try and use those, and so I don't know if you guys have heard about poi, but poi is also one of our indigenous foods. And so it's just the kalo that's pounded with a little bit of water. And we actually will use that to do something like make a parfait. So we put a layer of poi, then a layer of low fat yogurt or something, and then lots of fruit on top of it. And maybe just a tiny bit of honey. We did use a little bit of honey. So we try and do those kind of things. But desserts are definitely hard. Most of our community, they're not real familiar, like you know, things like monk food or stevia or something like that. It takes a little while. I'm not a fan of, you know, saccharin or aspartame or any of those more chemical replacements, but I think those that come from natural plants like you know, stevia and monk fruit, as I mentioned, as a couple of them, that we can use a little bit of them. But yeah, we struggle with that too. We just try and figure out things like sweet potato is another thing that you know, the purple ones, they call them Okinawan over here, but we steam or boil it, and then we cut it into slices, and then I brush it with coconut oil and a little bit of cinnamon, and we put that under a broiler for kind of a nice snack. We
Yes.
also have cut sweet potato and put berries on top of it, and then made like a whipped cream out of coconut milk. You know, if you take that top creamy layer of the canned coconut, you can actually whip it and to make it into a little bit of a healthier kind of dress. So we try to use as much whole foods as possible within the desserts that we're doing. We try and use at least a cultural food within the desserts that we're doing, and then, you know, do other stuff. Coconut is something in our culture, and I don't think you guys have coconut up there, but we can actually, you know, it can be sweet, and it's got a little bit of a healthier fat inside of it. And so we can also use those to try and you know, cut up coconut with fruits and that kind of thing. We use our lily koi. I think you guys, it might be called passion fruit,
Mhm.
but just really taking the seeds and blending it and straining it and putting that as a little bit of a topping over fruit. But again, teaching them that they can't have as much fruit. And, you know, unfortunately for us here in Hawaii, all of our tropical fruits seem to be the ones that are higher in sugar. So mango and papaya, I mean, pineapple, those kind of things. So even teaching them that, you know, smaller amounts of that, but trying to add some type of protein or cultural starch within the fruit to help to balance out the glycemic index is what we do. But we'll even give them, you know, healthier cookies and teach them portion control of that, and how do you, you know, put some nuts and coconut and that kind of stuff uh, within the dessert to make it a little oatmeal to make it a little bit healthier. So yeah, if you, we're also open to ideas on that, because that's something that we constantly try to do with our community too.
Yeah, that can be a challenge to incorporate or include sugar, or to not include it. Or I think one of the best ways you mentioned it is portion control, figuring out, okay, what's going to satisfy me, what's enough. You know, sometimes we go and mindlessly eat and we mindlessly partake in, you know, depending on our mood, depending on what's going on in our surroundings, we don't realize, and we mindlessly eat too much or have too much of something that's not good for us. And it's really good. It's something I'm trying to spread the word, like to understand that mindfulness, that intuitive part of the brain that we can reactivate. It's a challenge. I find it myself pretty difficult to teach myself or really remind myself, is this what I really want? Am I really craving this, this huge dessert? But yeah, we do have, I think we do have sweet potatoes, and I like the recipes you just mentioned. We do have a lot of canned coconut product, and it does add, I put them in my savory dishes. So for example, a red chili soup, I believe it was a red chili soup, and add a little bit of coconut milk. That changes the entire profile of the ingredient, the recipe. But it was good. It was a nice healthy fat added to my recipe. But yeah, always exploring if we can connect on some of those desserts that you have. What we can definitely do that. Let me see. Do we have any more questions? All right. I don't think we have any other questions right now. But yeah, it looks like we're over time just a little bit. And I really want to thank you for coming in to speak with us during our lunch period. I know there's a time difference, but I'm really thankful that you're able to give us some feedback and then also provide us with some motivation, different ways of our community, and then also our staff with different, this motivation to explore different avenues, different initiatives moving forward in the year. I really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. And to all of our viewers, if you decide to watch it later, that's fine. Great. Let us know if you have any comments. We'll respond. But that's all I have right now. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. And hopefully, yes, I'll either see you in New Mexico or you can come visit us in Hawaii.
Yes, we'll connect. Definitely connect. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
We know.
All right. Thank you. Bye.